Hello again and welcome to another week of A Current Affair. It sounds like something out of the third world, but it's happening right here in Australia. An entire family, husband, wife and 3 children, all slaving away at machines sewing clothes, just to earn the grand total of around $5 an hour. Now that's less than half the minimum award rate for a factory worker. But remember, in this case, it's paying for the work of 5 people. Edwina Gatemy has the story.
Australians spend billions of dollars each year making themselves look good. But there's a scandal hidden behind many of the clothes we buy.
Well, I've personally seen a child as young as 8 sewing at an industrial machine, and I think that's a very alarming sight.
Unpaid Australian children being used to keep the rag trade competitive.
Bloody outrageous. I'm one of those people who are very concerned about goods coming into Australia from third world countries where children are involved. Yet here in Australia we have exactly the same set of circumstances where children are forced into slave-like conditions working at home.
Little by little, the production of Australian clothing is moving out of the factories and into the back rooms of homes in suburbs like Melbourne's Sunshine. If this report by the Textile Clothing and Footwear Union is to be believed, there are some 330,000 outworkers sewing garments in Australia, some for as little as 50 cents an hour. Even more disturbing, it estimates that 1 in 4 of these families uses children to assist them.
I got a lot of Vietnamese friends, and like they in the same situation as me. Their parents get low pay, so they have to help their parents working.
While most Australian children spend their spare time as they please, since she was 12, Kim Nguyen has spent hers working with her parents in the garage, sewing for some of Australia's best-known labels.
Diamond Cut, Lorento, Target, Katie's, Susan, Direct, Mile.
Kim and her sisters, 15-year-old Han and 12-year-old Ho, all work the machines. At just 3, Ni is too little, but as she grows older, she too can forget any notion of a normal Australian childhood.
I'll probably help them about 2 to 3 hours.
Every day?
Yeah.
And on weekends?
Probably 8 or 9 hours.
Every weekend?
Yeah.
And school holidays?
As my parents working. But I would just, like they work 15 or maybe 14 hours. I just work a bit shorter, about 9.
Every day of the school holidays?
Yep.
We noticed a pattern that was occurring in some of our students, that they were coming to school late, and then in the afternoon some of them would go off to sleep. They'd be very tired and lethargic. I know you guys went to science work.
As headmaster of Springvale High School in one of Melbourne's largest migrant communities, Leon Palmero is concerned at what's happening to many of his students.
From what we understand is that they were, some till midnight, some till early hours. They were just helping their parents as soon as they got home. Instead of doing their homework, their homework would consist of sewing for their parents.
Yes, of course I get tired, but because my parents really need my help and I have to help them. If I don't help them, my family financial going to be big problem.
And when you get tired, does it make it difficult for you to study?
Yes.
Duc Nguyen and his family are ripe for exploitation. Refugees from Vietnam with difficulty speaking English and even greater difficulty getting a decent job. How do you feel about the fact that your children have to work?
Of course, I'm very upset. But then, if they don't help me, we can't live, and Kim can't go to school anymore because we don't have enough clothes and everything for her to go to school. We have no job because for outworkers, the pay is too low. We have no choice.
Outworkers like Duc have fed the work through contractors, middlemen who deal between them and the retailers. Annie Delaney from the Textile Clothing and Footwear Union is appalled by the conditions.
Their work, they're often told they have to finish the work within a set time, and they're given more work than they can handle, and if they don't finish that work, they think they won't get other work. So it's in that context that low pay, tight deadlines, that children have to work to assist them.
In a good week, if they all work hard, the Nguyen's can make a shade more than if they simply sat back and took the dole. Have you ever had to work all through the night?
Yeah, a few times.
All through the night?
Mm-hmm.
The woman at home who sews it up gets paid $6 to $7. Country Road sells it for $99.
In federal parliament last year, former Victorian Labor MP Peter Cleland identified 42 Australian companies selling goods, some now suspected of having been made by children.
They're using the child labour in Australia. They don't care. They're doubling their profit by going into the outreach industry. Profit's their concern, not morality, not children.
When tariff protection against imports was dropped to make the local industry more competitive, the simple solution was cheap labour.
Although the reality is that many legitimate factories in Australia have been forced to close because they cannot compete with the outreach industry. I know of firms that have been charging $6 to $7 for a fashion garment, using award wages, working in factories, latest computer technology. They were forced to close because they were being beaten by quotes of $3 a garment.
The Nguyen family spent last Christmas making these sweatshirts for one of Australia's wealthiest retail giants. Well, 3 months later, and the garment that the Nguyen children were sewing is now for sale in our stores. Now, the Nguyen family was paid around $1.20 to make this garment. I've paid around $30 to buy it here at Myer. Like most of the companies we approached, Myer Grace Brothers refused an interview. Like the others, they distanced themselves from the issue, saying it was a matter for their suppliers. And yet only last year, Myer Grace Brothers did pledge not to sell product using child labour. The issue then was hand-woven imported rugs. The question is, how can Myer identify a rug made by child labour in Asia, but not a sweatshirt made in Melbourne? Do you think you have a responsibility to ensure that children aren't sewing your garments?
I think all Australians do. I mean, it is not something that is acceptable in this country.
Diamond Cut was the only label we approached that agreed to talk to us about the use of child labour. Are you aware that children have been sewing some of your garments?
I'm not aware of that.
Didn't the union tell you?
We investigated.
And you found nothing?
Well, we were assured that the children's situation was not so.
By whom?
By the management of Ann Fashions.
And when we found that person, she denied profiting from child labour also. Right. We've spoken to people that say that you know that the children were doing the work.
If any people tell you I know it, it's wrong. It's a liar.
Yeah, we worked really hard, and while they didn't do anything, and we received, a lot of profit from the garment, and we worked so hard, like, we just received a small amount of money from that.
Peter Cleland and his supporters propose consumer boycotts of stores unable to guarantee sale of products free from child labour.
Well, I think they carry all of the responsibility. All of it. We're dealing with migrants who are coming into the country desperate to get a head start. One can be critical of them. But ultimately, who carries the biggest burden here? It's the large firms who are maximising their profits at the expense of children.
Edwina Gatenby with that report. Next, a tragic reminder of the risks that our lifesavers are asked to take.
The unbelievable's happened. I guess we've lost a competitor.
We want to make it quite clear that Robert loved what he was doing.
Well, it should have been the high point of the year for Australia's lifesavers, their national championships, honouring the best and the bravest. Instead, the competition ended in controversy, marred by the death of a junior lifesaver, and a belief among some of his colleagues that the event should have been called off long before tragedy struck. Fiona McKenzie reports.
If we felt it was unsafe, and if we felt that we were putting our members' lives at risk, we would have had no hesitation whatsoever in cancelling the event.
Competitors were again confronted by heavy seas. Many.
This one, smash him, good driver, backwards.
In all, there were 35 rescues late this afternoon.
Now he calls him back again, and that's the reason why.
Organisers accepted the inevitable and called off some events.
16 people treated at hospital, scores more requiring first aid. The huge seas off Kurrawa were breaking boards and bodies. Some competitors even begged their races be delayed. But still, the show went on. It ended in tragedy.
The unbelievable's happened, I guess. Unfortunately, we've lost a competitor in one of the events that was run some half an hour ago. Every helicopter, every rubber boat, everything that's floating is out there looking. And,
15-year-old Robert Gatenby was competing in the under-18 surfboat finals when his boat and another collided. It's believed he was knocked unconscious and drowned.
We are grieving with the family at the present time over the loss of this child. It doesn't give us any joy to sit here today and look back on this tragedy.
Surf Lifesaving Chief Executive Scott Derwin is today defending his association's decision to press ahead with the national titles. Should the titles have gone ahead yesterday?
Well, I think always with the benefit of hindsight you might review it. I'm still believe that the right decision was made to go ahead. I mean, obviously this is a tragedy of immense proportions and something that we're all still trying to come to grips with.
This is a statement from Jeff, Vicky and Michael Gatenby.
Alan Welpton is the president of the Australian Surf Lifesaving Association.
We want to make it quite clear that Robert loved what he was doing. My family does not hold anyone responsible for anything that might have happened.
A tragic accident, certainly. But the wisdom of continuing the carnival in such treacherous conditions was being questioned well before the under-18s readied their boats for the Sunday final.
They told us we had to get out there and this has happened, so I'm not very happy at all.
Samantha O'Brien claims the concerns of competitors in the Iron Woman semi-finals on Saturday were ignored by officials.
Maureen Corbett's out. She hurt her ribs in the heats. I mean, that should have been enough to tell them, you know, the surf was just too dangerous for the girls to go out in. But, you know, that couldn't stop them from telling us to get out there.
The officials at that stage took the view that the conditions were still safe for them to proceed, and unfortunately, of course, both Reen and Samantha O'Brien were injured in that event.
Not only did some competitors feel conditions were too dangerous, but by Saturday afternoon, even the local hospital was starting to ask questions. Southport Hospital was all geared up for injuries from the IndyCar racing, but what it got instead was a queue of patients from the surf lifesaving titles. So many that the emergency department contacted carnival organisers to express concern about the number and the types of injuries it was seeing.
Injuries are not uncommon. I think it's probably just because of all the drama surrounding this carnival, it became well known that a lot of people were injured. And
Ironman Grant Kenny believes officials were right to go ahead.
I don't think that there was anything wrong. I mean, most people that have competed in surf carnivals for any more than a couple of years would have competed in at least that bigger surf, if not bigger.
The search for Robert Gatenby is continuing. Clubbies from all around Australia pitching in to help.
Surf Lifesaving is a family. It's an incredible feeling to be part of that family, and everyone last night and obviously today is grieving with the family. I mean, we're all trying to share it with them.
Fiona McKenzie there in Queensland. Next, keeping alive a piece of Australia made famous by Peter Allen.
It's just as it was 125 years ago.
Just ask the saddler.
Welcome back. Anyone who's ever heard Peter Allen's nostalgic ballad has probably formed their own mental picture of the Tenterfield saddler. The song, of course, is a tribute to Peter Allen's grandfather, who started work in the northern New South Wales town in the early part of this century. And for Linda Rose, meeting today's Tenterfield saddler was just like taking a trip back in time.
It's a lovely town, Tenterfield. It's a living museum. But to be quite honest, I wouldn't have known about Tenterfield only for the song.
Time is a traveller, Tenterfield saddler, turn your head.
Of course, Peter Allen made the town famous when he wrote this song about his grandfather, George Woolnough.
52 years he sat on his veranda, made his saddles
Now Trevor Gibson is the 5th saddler to carry on the tradition, in the same old granite building as the others before him.
They never changed it. Just came in, did their work, and either died or walked out and left it as it was. And that's the way it should be. It's just as it was 125 years ago.
Just ask the saddler. He lived without sin. They're building a library for him.
The saddlery itself may not have changed, but a simple song has led thousands of people through the doors.
Good day, you're the Tenterfield saddler, are you?
Trevor Gibson.
Cliff.
Cliff?
Ivan.
Ivan. So what are you fellas doing about here? I think Tenterfield saddler is better known than any other saddlery in the world. I've had a fellow walk in here from South Africa and said, I've heard about you in South Africa, mate. I want to meet you.
But after a while, Trevor found he spent more time telling yarns than making saddles. So after 8 years in the business, he put it up for sale.
We actually got to the place through the song. He worked on High Street, he lived on Manners, and we just turned left off Rouse into High Street, and there's the famous Tenterfield saddler.
Brian Meldon is in the computer business in Brisbane. The Tenterfield saddler is his favourite song, so he jumped at the chance to own this old building.
There's probably mixed feelings at first.
It should belong to the local people, and we take what we can get.
Well, evidently no one local was interested.
At first, the locals didn't know what to think of this bloke from the city who'd bought a piece of their town's history. Some said he was going to pull it apart brick by brick and take it back to the Gold Coast. Another story was he had plans for a pizza parlour. But Brian Meldon wouldn't change a thing. He wants to keep the legend alive, so there'll always be the Tenterfield saddler.
The grandson of George has been all around the world and lives no special place.
So if you changed it, you would kill it. The thing with it, your roof's 125 years of roll your own tobacco, and on the floor there's holes where they've been patched by leather, and it's just got a good feel about the place, and the smell of leather when you walk into it.
And there's still the occasional customer who relies on the skills of a saddler working the old-fashioned way.
Oh, we've done about 140 clicks. We've been on the road a week.
And where are you headed?
Urella.
Urella.
Yeah.
And did you just have to stop into the Tenterfield saddler?
Oh, we normally stop here. In fact, I know the saddler pretty well,
And Alan knows there's always a park for him right outside the shop. It's still a working saddlery because Brian has convinced Trevor to stay on.
There can be no other Tenterfield saddler. Well, Trevor's still with us, and I hope he's with us for many, many years, because he's carried on a fine tradition, and he's the 5th Tenterfield saddler, and at some stage up the road we've got to train another one. And
you're not going to go into the job?
I don't think it'll be me. I'll do the selling.
And selling is what Brian's good at. The famous name is now a brand of true blue Aussie clothing.
I'd like to think that the Tenterfield saddler will be known in Regent Street in London, or in Japan, or in Europe, or wherever you want to take it.
A Queensland brewery is even producing a Tenterfield saddler beer. And all this has Trevor's seal of approval.
He's keeping purely Australian, and we're prepared to sort of go with him.
Brian may not be a local, but the people here have now accepted him as an honorary one at least.
Well, I think it's one of the greatest things ever happened. See?
Orb's been here for 60 years and is happy to see so many more visitors passing through town.
The other day when they said, all wanted to see it in the bus. They said, pull up in front of that Tenterfield saddler, will you, Orb? I said, we certainly will.
Time is a tale teller, Tenterfield saddler, make a bet.
Linda Rose with that report and those wonderful pictures, shot by Peter Harden. Our sound was by Stuart McClellan, and the editor was Bob Braithwaite. We'll come back with more in just a moment. Well, now that Victorian Premier Jeff Kennett has been resoundingly returned for a second term, one of Victoria's faceless men has finally gone public. Former Supreme Court Judge Sir Murray Rivers is the Liberal Party strongman who has guided Jeff Kennett's political career, but an aversion to publicity and a hatred of the media has kept him in the shadows. Well, lawyer and journalist Richard Acton takes up the story.
Sir Murray Rivers is really the equivalent of Graham Richardson in the Liberal Party. He's a backroom manipulator par excellence. He is devious, he's cunning, he's rat sharp.
Hello, Jeffries. Oh, it's not Jeffries. Of course it can't be Jeffries. Jeffries dead. Murray, how are
Hello,
you?
how are you? Nice to see you. His appointment was understood to have been a mistake at the time. The government of the day had proposed to appoint Renfrey Withers, the leading silk in Victoria. However, Sir Arthur Ryler, the Attorney General's Secretary, had misunderstood the Attorney's instruction and had telephoned Murray Rivers instead of Renfrey Withers and invited him to accept the appointment.
Yes, well, of course, this is the court where I used to preside. Of course, I studied the Chinese legal system in some great depth, of course, and the Chinese had it all worked out, and I really tended to follow their line of thinking. I mean, obviously, the police wouldn't be wasting their time bringing a person forward unless they were guilty, and that's the way I used to run my court. A clear court was a good court. Guilty, I'd have them all out of here by 10 o'clock in the morning.
He virtually lived in the Melbourne Club. He was there for breakfast, he was there for lunch, he was there for dinner. And he held table there, he held court there. He's been behind Kennett as a sort of significant influence, toning Kennett down when Kennett got a bit excitable.
Well, this is where we make all the decisions in Victoria, here in the club. In fact, at this very table here is where we decided to get rid of the education system and the health system. In fact, I remember I was sitting there, Jeffrey was sitting there, I don't know where Ron was, but anyway, this is where it was all decided. Yes, and then of course there was quite a big song and dance about it afterwards, and we did that here on this little piano. We've got a few songs together. And how have you been going?
Very, very good, sir, mate.
Very good. What have you been working on today?
A very difficult case.
Yes, how did
At the Crown Casino. And,
oh, that's
yes.
Now, when I saw Sir Murray in the tally room on Saturday night, I had no idea who he was, but he did bear a striking resemblance to our very own Brian Dorr. Just time to look at one of our stories tomorrow night, an amazing weight loss breakthrough from a local hospital. It's helped one woman shed more than 50 kilos.
It'd be nice to be able to buy nice clothes off the rack.
I'm opening that up. You see how it opens?
The surgery that was responsible for Leanne Barnes going from this to this. A staggering weight loss of 55 kilos.
Try and lift that.
Well, I can't.
That's less than half of what you've lost.
That's amazing.
Liam Bartlett with that story tomorrow night. Thanks for being with me. We'll see you the same time then. Bye now.